Welcome to Mixing with Mike, brought to you by MPGinsider.com and the MPG Online Music Production School. This is a mixing tip on getting a quick vocal EQ. So I'm going to step right over here to Pro Tools here, and I have a vocal, and one of the basic things that you want to do for a vocal first, before digging into detail, is just to get a very general, basic tonal balance of the EQ. So quite often, all of the sound, really all the time, all of the sound is based off of the microphone, the vocalist, the tonal characteristics of the vocalist, and the environment in which that vocal is recorded in. When you get to the mix stage, all of that stuff is out of your control, and you can only work with what you have. Now, generally, I find the best approach is to start with very broad general EQ, mostly using shelving EQs and filters to kind of get the general characteristic sound that you want, and then you can start to play with some other elements to kind of bring out the characteristics of what you want. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a filter, and I'm going to start with a filter with a very hard edge here, right? So I want the drop off here, or the order of the noise filter, to be very high. It doesn't represent it there in terms of the normal first order, second order, third order noise filter, and that it's variable with this particular EQ, but this will give you a basic guideline here. So with a male
I
voice,
was thrown
what I want to do is
into the sea
I want to start to filter
to face a world
until I
that
start to hear
bet
the effect of it.
against me. Told me sink or swim.
So you can definitely hear it
as I
there.
slowly sank, asking what I'd done to have to walk the plank. Maybe everyone comes a little bit undone.
And what this does
But
is it helps to filter away any rumble in the microphone, and that's very apparent quite often in large diaphragm condenser mics. Now, this is a basic starting place, and in general, you don't want to go too far along in terms of, or high up in terms of the frequency, but one way you can kind of tailor this, and you can see this reflected in the filters, if I want to roll off a little bit more of the low end of this voice, I can also
I was thrown
take this and
into the sea
you can see that it starts at a higher
to
frequency.
face a world that bet against me.
So I can compare this to this.
Told me sink or swim as I slowly sank, asking what I'd done to have to walk the plank.
So here, this helps to kind of roll off just a touch there. So we start to get a roll off here up more towards 100 or 125, and then it starts to filter off a little more dramatically. Now, in this particular vocal, there's not a lot of hard rumble in there, so this is not as much of an issue. The next thing I want to do is I want to start subtractively. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with a shelving EQ. Now, with the shelving EQ, I can do a resonant shelf, right? And a resonant shelf, what this does is it actually starts to add like a little bump there. And sometimes this is helpful, or I can go with the smooth characteristic. I'm going to start somewhere right in between, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this frequency around. Now I'm going to take away the filter just so you can kind of see what's going on here, and then the filter is adding on or taking away the rest of it. So essentially, this is really flat. That's what it's applying, and then you see the curve downward is the filter that's added down on the bottom, the high pass filter. So let's start
I was thrown
by sweeping this.
into the sea
So there we are, basically full
to
frequency.
face a world that bet against me. Told me sink or swim as I slowly sank.
And now this may be a bit much here.
Asking
Maybe I want to have a little bit more warmth.
to have to walk the
But I want to start
plank.
with something that where I can hear it pretty
Maybe
aggressively.
everyone comes a little bit undone. But we patch the holes and we move along.
So without adding any high end, I've now added in a bit more presence into the voice. Now, depending upon where this is, or how far this goes up, I may actually be able to go up farther. Let's see.
I was thrown into the sea to face a world that bet.
And there, the difference between getting up towards 700 versus around 450, which is where we were before, is that we get a little bit of that kind of boxiness that you can sometimes find around 500. So let's compare the two.
I was thrown into the sea to face a world that bet against.
And that's a slightly more open sound. Now, you may prefer the other one. I kind of think a little bit more this way just because some of the other instrumentation is going to maybe occupy some of that in this particular mix. But you can start from there and use that as a basic guide. Now, one thing that I can do here to help kind of exaggerate this is now to
I
work with
was
a filter.
thrown into the sea to face a world that bet
So that's
against
smoother.
me.
This will add a little more
Told me
character.
sink or swim as I slowly sank, asking what I'd done to.
So that brings back some of that clarity there in the mid-range. So this is something you don't have to do, but sometimes it's kind of helpful. The one other thing that I can do here is I can put a high frequency shelf in and then start to work backwards from here, right? So this is picking up and now I can add a little bit more presence here and let's just kind of see what we get with this.
I was thrown into the sea to face a world that bet against me.
Right? So now what I've done here with a very simple two shelves and a filter on the low end is I've basically created a nice tonal balance for the vocal. And from this point, then if I start to compress and start to do other things, I'll probably bring out a lot of the characteristics of the sound. What's good about this is that rather than adding in very narrow frequencies, that or adding in, say a parametric EQ in the 2 to 6K ranges that are more likely to bring out sibilances. And this, with the shelving EQ and particularly filtering off the low end, is going to give me better tonal balance with the frequencies and kind of get things basically in place a little bit better. What's really cool about this EQ also is that I can grab the REQ, is that I can grab multiple frequencies and sweep them. Let's take a look at what this is.
I was thrown into the sea to face a world that bet against me.
So here what I can do,
Told me sink or swim as I slowly sank,
that's where we were.
asking what I'd done to have to walk.
And so by grabbing those two and shifting them, I can now kind of switch that little tonal characteristic. So some of that marbliness that was in there before when this was a little bit lower disappears. And this is a very, very quick, simple way to kind of get a very basic tonal balance on the vocal. So let's listen with and without.
I was thrown into the sea to face a world that bet against me.
So simple EQ, not a ton of it. Doesn't really affect the balances in terms of making things more sibilant. Add the presence that you're looking for and still has some warmth and body. And now if you start to compress from this place, you'll find that you'll get better results, and any additive that you need, EQ that you need to do afterwards, is going to be far less. So there's a quick tip on how to get a quick vocal sound or get the basic tonal shaping of your vocal kick-started early and quickly so that you can move on with the rest of your mix. This is an MPG Insider Mixing with Mike tip brought to you by MPG Online Music Production School. Thanks for tuning in.